Think about the ground under your feet right now. You've never questioned it. Not once. You wake up, you walk out the door, and you trust completely, automatically, that the ground will be exactly where it was yesterday. But what if it wasn't? What if every single day the street in front of your house was a tiny fraction lower than the day before? What if the road you commute on, the building you go to work in, the neighborhood you've lived in your whole life, was slowly, quietly, invisibly sinking? This isn't a thought experiment. It's not a future scenario. It's happening right now, in 28 major American cities, to tens of millions of people who have absolutely no idea. And there's a very good chance one of those cities is yours. Let's start with the number 28. That's how many major American cities scientists have now confirmed are experiencing what geologists call land subsidence, the gradual sinking of the Earth's surface. We're talking about cities that house tens of millions of people, cities with ancient water systems, aging bridges, century-old buildings, and underground rail networks, all quietly descending. Some areas are dropping half an inch per year. That might not sound like much, but multiply that across decades, and you're talking about several feet of lost elevation in cities that often sit just a few feet above sea level to begin with. New York, Houston, Dallas, Long Beach, Las Vegas, parts of California, stretching across the Central Valley. The list reads like a greatest hits of American urban life. And here's the thing that keeps scientists up at night. The ground is sinking faster in some places than sea levels are rising, which means these cities face a double threat from two directions, from below and from the water's edge. So what's actually causing this? And can anything be done? Here's where it gets fascinating. Most people, when they hear cities are sinking, immediately think skyscrapers. All that steel and glass and concrete pressing down on the ground. And yes, weight plays a role, but it's actually a surprisingly small one. The real culprit? Water. Or more precisely, the lack of it underground. Beneath every major city lies a vast network of aquifers, underground layers of rock and sediment saturated with water. For over a century, these cities have been drilling into those aquifers and pumping out groundwater at enormous scale. For drinking, for agriculture, for industry. When you remove that water, the soil particles that were held apart by it, literally suspended in the pressure of the water, start to compact. They press together, and the ground above, it drops. This process is called aquifer compaction, and in some areas, once it happens, it's permanent. The ground doesn't bounce back when the water returns. The damage is locked in. Think of it like a sponge. Wet, it holds its shape. Squeeze all the water out, and it shrinks. And stays shrunk. Now layer on top of that natural sediment compression in coastal cities built on river deltas and reclaimed marshland. The weight of urban construction over time, and in some regions, the extraction of oil and gas from underground formations. And you have a slow-motion geological crisis unfolding beneath some of the most densely populated land on Earth. America isn't alone in this. The most dramatic warning the world has already received played out in Jakarta, Indonesia, a megacity of over 30 million people. Jakarta was sinking at an almost unbelievable rate, up to 10 inches per year in some northern districts. Roads crumbled, buildings tilted, entire neighborhoods were swallowed by flooding that never fully receded. The northern coastline of the city dropped so far below sea level that seawater began reclaiming land permanently. The situation became so severe that Indonesia made a decision almost unthinkable in scale. They decided to move their entire national capital to a new city, Nusantara, built from scratch on the island of Borneo. Let that sink in for a moment. A nation of 270 million people decided it was more practical to build a brand new capital city than to reverse what groundwater extraction had done to the old one. That's the extreme end of the spectrum, but it stands as a vivid illustration of what happens when land subsidence is ignored long enough. In Mexico City, the ground has sunk over 30 feet in the last century. Historic buildings lean visibly. Colonial-era churches tilt at angles their architects never intended. The city's ancient Aztec foundations, built on a lakebed, continue their slow descent. The question facing American cities is not whether this is real. The data is irrefutable. The question is, how far will we let it go before we act? In American cities, the effects are already visible. If you know what you're looking for, roads that crack and buckle without obvious cause, water pipes that fracture underground, leading to sinkholes, buildings that develop mysterious structural stress, drainage systems that no longer work properly because the land has shifted out of alignment with where engineers designed them to drain. In Houston, certain neighborhoods have sunk more than 10 feet over the past century, making an already flood-prone city dramatically more vulnerable to heavy rainfall events. In parts of California's Central Valley, the ground has dropped by nearly 30 feet since the 1920s due to agricultural groundwater pumping, damaging canals, aqueducts, and bridges that were built for a land surface that no longer exists at the same elevation. And here's what makes the infrastructure problem so insidious. By the time the damage is visible on the surface, the underground cause has often been building for decades. You're not fixing a problem in real time. You're playing catch-up with a process that started before most of us were born. The estimated cost of infrastructure damage from land subsidence globally runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. In the US alone, the repair bills are climbing. Now here's a plot twist you probably didn't see coming. One of the fastest growing drivers of groundwater demand in the United States right now? Artificial intelligence, the data centers that power AI systems, the servers that run the models, process the queries, store the outputs, require enormous amounts of water for cooling. A single large data center can consume millions of gallons of water per day. And many of these facilities are being built in regions already under significant groundwater stress, places like the American Southwest and parts of Texas. As the AI industry continues its explosive growth, its water footprint is quietly expanding alongside it. In areas where groundwater is already being depleted, adding massive new demand from data centers accelerates the very extraction that causes the ground to sink. It's one of those strange modern ironies. The technology designed to help us solve complex problems may, in one corner of the equation, be quietly contributing to one. So where does hope live in all of this? The encouraging truth is that land subsidence, unlike many environmental challenges, is one that responds to human action. When the cause is reduced, the sinking often slows, or in some cases, nearly stops. The city of Tokyo is one of the great success stories. In the mid-20th century, Tokyo was sinking rapidly, dropping over 15 feet in some areas. The Japanese government intervened aggressively, regulating groundwater extraction and developing alternative water supplies. The sinking slowed dramatically. The city stabilized. In Santa Clara, California, managed aquifer recharge, the deliberate practice of replenishing groundwater by directing surface water back underground, has actually caused parts of the ground to slowly rise again. Across the field of urban water management, several solutions are gaining traction. Wastewater recycling, treating and re-injecting used water back into aquifers instead of discharging it, which both reduces demand and replenishes the underground supply. Rainwater harvesting, capturing rainfall at the city scale before it runs off into storm drains, and redirecting it underground to recharge aquifers naturally. Permeable pavement and urban green infrastructure, redesigning city surfaces so that rain infiltrates the ground rather than racing off into pipes, giving water the chance to reach the aquifers below. Desalination in coastal cities, turning seawater into fresh water to reduce the pressure on underground sources entirely. None of these are simple, none are cheap, but the cost of deploying them is a fraction of what continued land subsidence will ultimately demand from crumbling infrastructure. The science knows what needs to be done. The technology exists. What remains is the collective will to prioritize the ground beneath our feet. Cities have always been testaments to human ambition. We build upward, we reach higher. We pour steel and pour concrete, and we call it civilization. But beneath all of that ambition, beneath the foundations, beneath the pipes and the cables and the subway tunnels, is just Earth. And the Earth, it turns out, has its own slow rhythm, its own rules. 28 cities, millions of lives, infrastructure built. For a ground that is no longer quite where it was, the good news is that we see it now. We have the tools to measure it, the science to understand it, and, if we choose, the ingenuity to slow it down. The question is whether we'll act before the cracks in the sidewalk become cracks we can no longer ignore. If this opened your eyes to something happening right beneath your feet, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe for more stories like this one, and we'll see you in the next one.